Welcome back to the Ultimate Mixdown. Today we're going to continue diving into the exciting topic of vocal effects. Specifically today we're going to be talking about adding reverb to increase the depth of our vocals. Vocal depth refers to how three-dimensional or fold the vocal sounds in the overall mix. And the goal is to simulate front-to-back positioning in a virtual space. Why are we going to use reverb? Because it's a tried and true and versatile tool for adding this three-dimensional depth, and it's also extremely fun to work with. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to use reverb to give your vocal a polished finished sound, but also to blend it seamlessly with the ambience of the rest of the track. Now before we start, I wanted to give you something. I have a 7 steps to a pro level mix PDF guide that you can get absolutely free. You can check it out in the description below. Now let's get right into this. So what is reverb? Reverb is essentially the sound of a space. Reverb plugins simulate the reflections of a source sound bouncing off of walls and other objects, and it makes it sound more three-dimensional. Now the first thing to mention is dry or wet, or a blend of the two. If you're putting this directly on a track, then you're going to want to play around with this and see exactly how much reverb you want affecting that track itself. I personally like to keep my reverbs on a separate track or a bus at 100% wet. This allows me to not only control the reverb separately from my tracks, but also to send multiple tracks to my reverb. In this case, I can send all my vocals to this one reverb. Size is basically the size of the virtual room that you're emulating. Or there'll be presets where you can select plate reverb, or we can have a small room or a hall. If you're going for more of a tight pop and tight rock vocals, you would use more of a short plate reverb sound. Again, keeping that vocal up front and not having it getting lost and eaten up by the reverb. But if you're going for more of a ballady or ambient type, then you want a bigger reverb. The next thing I want to talk about is decay time, decay length. So if you want a more tight and upfront vocal, you're going to want to have a shorter length. If you set this to a longer length, it's going to sound like the vocal is farther away and more distant. Now, 2 other parameters to point out are the filters. This essentially allows you to tame the amount of the reverb that's affecting particular frequencies in your vocals. So one trick I like to use to keep the vocals sounding up front is to make sure my reverb doesn't apply to too much low end or too much high end in my vocals. In a lot of cases, a lot of reverb plugins have damping. This is great for controlling how much of the high or low frequencies are absorbed into the virtual space. High frequency damping kind of reduces brightness and harshness, makes it sound warmer, while low frequency damping prevents muddy low end buildup. So this can be used in addition to our filtering to combat those types of problems. And we mentioned this in the vocal widening video. There's also in many cases a widening parameter that allows you to create an illusion that this reverb effect is farther out to the left and the right. And then lastly, the pre-delay, this is also very important, allows you to create space between the initial audio and the reverb. All right, so let's start using this in our mix. So we're going to go right click, insert new track. Let's name it real quick, vocal reverb bus. And I'm going to use it as a bus. That's why I created a separate track. And I'm going to select a reverb plugin. So the one we were showing earlier, we'll go with mCharm Verb. Now it's very simple in Reaper. You can click the routing, click and drag from routing of the lead vocal to the reverb. And that creates a send, essentially, from the lead vocal to the reverb. And then you can increase the amount that's being sent using this slider. And then you have this slider here, adjusting how much reverb or vocal reverb is in the overall mix. So let's take a listen to just this initial reverb setting.
Will you go ahead? I think I'll stay.
Okay, and let me solo the vocals in the reverb just so you can hear it.
Will you go ahead? I think I'll stay.
Like I mentioned, I like to have the reverb bus being 100% wet because then I can just dial back all of that reverb or increase it as necessary.
Will you go ahead? I think I'll stay.
Okay, that sounds pretty good just right out of the gate. I want the size of the reverb to be a little smaller so that our vocal doesn't get lost in this mix.
Will you go ahead? I think I'll stay.
So that size seems pretty good. The length, I want to keep it short. If we had a really long decay.
Will you go ahead? I think I'll stay.
So you hear that decay continuing. It went all the way out here. That's why length is really important to dial in. I'm going to keep it short. I do want to get rid of some of the low frequencies, just a couple hundred hertz. And then for the high cut, we're going to cut anything that's below 10 kilohertz.
Will you go ahead? I think I'll stay.
Okay, and then let's add some widening. So I'm going to bring this up maybe 50%, 60%.
Will you go ahead? I think I'll stay.
increase the size a little bit more. This seems like a good setting for what I'm looking for in my mix on my lead vocal. So we can listen to it in the context of the mix, and I'll dial it in with this slider.
Well, you go ahead, I think I'll stay.
So ever so subtle. I'm also going to take these harmonies and we will drag those. All right, so I'll take this one and route it to the same reverb track, and I'm not going to have it as prominent in the reverb, so we'll keep that send amount down. Same with this harmony. Okay, so we have our two harmonies now routed, so we'll listen to all of those together.
Well, you go ahead, I think I'll stay.
All right, and now in the mix.
Well, you go ahead, I think I'll stay.
So we could have another reverb that takes maybe just the lead vocals, and it's a longer reverb, but it's a lot quieter in the mix, just to make it sound even more blended into the track. There's so many things that you can do. I urge you to try it on the track itself, on a bus, different lengths, different room sizes. Just go out there and get crazy. And also, I urge you again to pick up my 7 steps to a pro level mix. That'll help you get right out of the gate mixing your tracks, just so that you have something in front of you that you can walk step by step. Thank you again for joining the Ultimate Mixdown. I'll see you in the next video.